Good morning, everyone. We are passing on to the next module, insular fauna. And so, what is insular fauna? Insular fauna is a fauna found on islands, and the study of island biogeography is the field within biogeography. And the people or the ecologists who had been pioneered this field of ecology. They were Robert MacArthur and E.O. Wilson, and they formulated a theory of island biogeography, which predicts the number of species that would exist on a newly formed island. So MacArthur and Wilson, they postulated or formulated theory of island biogeography, which actually helps in predicting the number of species that would exist on a newly formed island. Now, the theory of island biogeography holds that the number of species found on an island is determined by two factors. The first one, it is the effect of the distance from the mainland, distance of the island from the mainland, and the second is the effect of the island size. Now, these would affect the rate of extinction of animals in the islands and the level of immigration as well. That is, islands which are closer to the mainland, they are more likely to receive more of migrants from the mainland, isn't it? So, as compared with those islands which are far away from the mainland. So, obviously, those islands which are closer to the mainland will have immigrants, in the sense population can be sustained. Another effect is what we have already said, the effect of island size. The size of the island, it affects the size effect, reflects the relationship between the island size and the species diversity. So the chance of extinction is greater on smaller islands than the larger ones. So as said, the effect of the island size is actually affecting the species diversity. So the island size is actually um, like almost directly proportional to the the rate of extinction of the species. Okay, so as the island size decreases in size, it's actually inversely proportional. So extinction rate is greater. Okay, sorry. So the larger islands can hold more species than smaller ones, obviously. And so we can see that there are two factors which determine the diversity and which determine the sustenance of the species. One is the distance between the island from the mainland, and the second is the island size. Okay, as the distance increases from the mainland, as this distance increases, you can see that there are less immigrants, and hence the species diversity, maybe species will be unique. Okay, the species found on the mainland, it will be, the island will be unique. At the same time, the size decreases, the species diversity is also affected in a negative way. Okay, now factors that influence island communities, if we see, the first one is degrees of isolation. Degrees of isolation means how far the island is from the neighboring islands as well as the mainland. Okay, so distance to nearest neighbor and the mainland. That is what is referred under degree of isolation. So as the degree of isolation is increasing, we can see that the island do have unique kind of the faunal composition. Okay, now length of isolation, that is the time. Uh, as we have already seen, all the islands and the what you call continents, every landmass were in the past they were together, isn't it? All joined together to form what is referred as a Pangea, and then this Pangea it's split into two, Laurasia and Gondwana land, isn't it? And then the continental drift theory says that all the continents have the present position of the continents have formed actually by the continental drift, isn't it? So that kind of a time, that is how far the particular island we are studying was with a mainland, how long it has been separated. Okay, so depending upon that, the species will be unique. So more it has been this particular island, if it was with the particular mainland for a very long period of time, and very recently only, just imagine, very recently only it got separated from the mainland, obviously the species found on the island will be strikingly resembling the faunal composition found on the mainland. But for instance, if the island has been separated from the mainland for a very long period of time, that is for maybe like millions of years it has been separated, it was isolated from the mainland, in that case we can see that this faunal composition on the island, it is unique. It is entirely different from what we can see on the mainland. Okay, so that is what is referring the length of isolation. Then size of the island. So larger area, greater diversity, right? Then fourth is climate. Climate here, the tropical versus Arctic. Obviously, those islands in tropical climate will have more amount of species diversity as against those in the Arctic. Similarly, humid versus arid. Arid means dry. Okay, so where there is humidity, obviously, chance of getting more species is higher. While arid in dry areas, obviously, it is not going to support a good amount of faunal species. Then fifth one, location relative to ocean currents. That is, it influences the ocean currents influences the nutrient, then the fishes reaching over there, then birds, obviously, seed flow patterns, etc. So if the location is not with respect to the ocean currents, if it is not in a favorable situation or location, obviously the immigrants will be less, number of species reaching there will be less. Obviously, it is going to affect the species diversity on the island. Then the next one, sixth one, is initial plant and animal composition. If previously attached to a larger landmass, that is, if the particular island was attached to a larger mainland, okay, for example, if it was attached to a mainland, uh, and what kind of plant and animal communities were there during that time. Okay, and after the separation of the island from the mainland, obviously those faunal composition and the plant communities will be existing, will be retained on the island. Okay, so those communities will be there. And after the later evolution, it may have changed the faunal composition, but still all those groups which had retained on the island will be there. For example, when we speak about marsupials on the Australian region, then primates on the American region. So all these are actually examples for this one. Okay, now the seventh one says species composition of earliest arrivals. If it was completely isolated for a very long period of time, we can say that the diversity, it depends upon the group of species which had reached for the first time, or the first arrivals, we can say. When we studied about that this one, succession, ecological succession, the pioneer community. Okay, that is what we are referring over here. So species composition of the earliest arrivals, actually it refer to the pioneer community. Then obviously the human activity, the influence of the human activity. So these are the factors that influence the community or the species composition on an island. Okay, so we spoke about the island biogeography, the theory of island biogeography, which was put forward by Robert MacArthur and E.O. Wilson, and what it says and what are the factors that influence the island communities or the floral composition. Okay, now we can see what are the different types of islands. Okay, island as such, it is a piece of land which is smaller than a continent, and it is completely surrounded by water all around. Okay, so it is geographically isolated from other land masses, right? Now there are different types of islands, and a few examples include islets. The first one, islets, it is actually very small islands. It is actually only maybe rocky or just land surfaces, and usually it is lacking vegetation. Such kind of smaller islands are referred as islets. Okay. Then next is IOTs, EYOT. It is IOTs. They are actually riverine islands. Okay, a small island in a river or a lake. It is referred as IOTs. Okay, usually you can see that these IOTs, the term has come uh, was initially used for all those smaller islands, especially river islands that was found on the river Thames and its tributaries in England. So that was where it was used for the earlier or initially. And then islet, it is actually what do you call, smaller landforms, or what do you call, smaller islands, a rock or a small island that has little vegetation and cannot sustain any human habitation. It is so small. Okay, so there are plenty of islets around continents and mainlands and all. Then the third one is archipelago. Archipelago, we have Indonesian archipelago. It is actually a group of geographically or geologically related islands. It is known as archipelago. Indonesia, it's a country, but it is formed of numerous smaller islands. And these smaller islands, they are all connected or related geographically or geologically. And such kind of island groups, it is known as archipelago. Okay, one example is Indonesia. Then the main classification. So Wallace, it was Alfred Russel Wallace who classified islands into two. The first one was known as continental islands, and the second one, the oceanic islands. And continental islands, these are the islands which lie on the continental shelf of a continent. Okay, and it was a part, such continental island. They were a part of the continent in the past, or at one time in the past. And examples include Greenland of the like North America, then Barbados and Trinidad of South America, then Great Britain, Ireland, and Sicily of Europe. Then we have Sumatra, Java of Asia, and New Guinea, Tasmania, and Kangaroo Island of Australia. So these are few examples of continental islands. And there is a special type of continental island which is referred as microcontinental island, which results when a continent is rifted. It is actually what you call ripped apart, isn't it? Somewhat like that. And example is like Madagascar. And another subtype is an island formed by deposition of tiny rocks by water currents, like barrier islands. These are a few examples. Okay, so we saw continental islands, a few examples of continental islands, and microcontinental islands. Example is Madagascar. Okay, so Madagascar can also be considered as a continental island itself. Okay, so continental island is so closely associated with continent that they were once a part of the continent. Okay, now then we can see that with respect to the fauna, continental islands lie very close to the main island, and hence the fauna is very similar to that of the mainland. And the degree of difference is actually proportional to the length of time of separation. So how long the island was separated from the mainland. Depending upon that, the species composition may have differences. Okay, a newly formed island would have fauna closely resembling that of the mainland, whereas an old one, that is, if the island was separated from the mainland for quite a long time, then there could be unique animals evolved as a result of isolation and adaptive radiation. Okay, generally animal diversity is poorer on islands compared to the adjacent continent. For example, British Isles, which is closer to Europe, they do not have any like many of the mammalian species like reindeer, lemmings, beavers, bears, wolves, and wild boar, which are found on the European mainland. Okay. Now, next one you have is the Oceanic Island. Oceanic Island, they do not rest in what you call a continental shelf, and they have never been a part of any mainland or a continent, and hence they don't have any association with the main continents. And mostly you can see that Oceanic Islands, they are volcanic in origin. So their volcanic origin is of three kinds. Maybe, for example, first instance, islands are formed from volcanoes by the subduction of one plate under another. Okay, so during volcanic eruptions and all, one plate may have gone underneath. Okay, in such cases, the upper one may get lifted up. You are getting, okay, the plate, one continental plate, it may go beneath the other one, and it lifts up the one above. So what happens? It becomes an island. Okay, such islands are such islands include Mauritius, Galapagos, then Mariana Islands, then Tonga in the Pacific Ocean, Azores and Lesser Antilles, then Sandwich Island of the Atlantic Ocean. There are plenty of examples. The second type is where oceanic islands are formed from when an oceanic rift reaches the surface. Okay, for example, Atlantic islands like Iceland and Jan Mayen. Iceland is the largest volcanic island in the world. Okay, and then we have the third type of oceanic island where islands are formed over volcanic hotspots. Hotspots are more or less stationary points, and tectonic plates moves above them. Okay, so plate movement across a hotspot produces a chain of islands. So examples include like Hawaiian Islands and Tuamotu Archipelago, etc. Right, and then we have another set of oceanic islands like atolls. They are islands formed from coral growth. Okay, coral reefs. I hope you remember coral reefs. Okay, so this can result in the formation of atoll islands. And Maldives and Lakshadweep are examples for atoll islands. Okay, so this is regarding the different types of islands. Okay, thank you.